the Emmental Valley in Switzerland, where the farmer plants a tree on top of one of these many hills when he gets the sun. And where the famous Emmental cheese comes from, and where the local community of Sumiswald holds a very beautiful castle, which is part of the Anabaptist Trail. And in this Anabaptist Trail, the local community sort of critically thinks about the dark past with the Anabaptists, and they had a local focus point in the Emmental. So the 20 to 30% of the population of the Emmental was Anabaptist. So together with you, we walk the trail and present the topics. There will be a flow of very interesting information which we can take use of even today. Thus, the topic is more actual than ever. Thanks for watching. The 25-year-old governor of the Castle of Sumiswald was very impressed by the experiences with the Anabaptists. His name was Nikolaus Zurkin. He reigned there for 2 years, from 1532 through 1534. He was one of the few tolerant rulers. As a friend of Calvin, he complained that he had to assist to an execution of an 80-year-old woman and her daughter just because of their faith. Zurkin tolerated the Anabaptists around Sumiswald and let them preach and have their meetings. The government of Bern admonished him to be stricter because they were still prosecuting them. It is said that there were some executions in front of the Castle of Sumiswald, probably before or after Mr. Zurkin. From a bench outside in the landscape on the way to the point 3, you see the point 1, the church of Sumiswald, and point 2, the castle. And you see the nice landscape with these many, many hills, typical for the Emmental. You see that the path is signed well with the little signs Täuferpfad. Point 3, the farm of Hans Haslibacher. He was born after 1500 in Sumiswald, and in 20th of October 1571 he was executed in Bern. So he was one of the most influential teachers of the Anabaptists, and when the priest of the local church said something against the Anabaptists, and Haslibacher disputed against him right in the service, and this brought him in front of court, and he got trouble all over again and again. This scene shows him with the executor in the background, where he says, "I put my hat here down on the ground, and my head, after being cut off, will jump into the hat and smile and will show the glory of God." And so it happened. The farm of Hans Haslibacher has passed through the hands of the family over 15 generations now. This demonstrates a little bit what tradition in the Emmental can mean. So it had some other departments. It had a cheese factory which was closed in 1995. Now they send the milk to cheese factory at 7 kilometers of distance, which is also a show factory, can be visited by tourists. The Haslibachers now, there are no more Mennonites, but one old lady now has a little museum in the small building beside the big farmhouse, which can be visited when you call her before by phone, make an appointment. This is the building with a little demonstration. She has a Amish cookbook and the old Haslibacher Bible from 1538. I think it was printed in Zurich. So it's very interesting. Stop 4, an Anabaptist teacher. They were meeting secretly in the forest, and here you can see an historical picture where they were chased by the Anabaptist hunters and brought to jail. Then there were little documents about Hans Haslebacher's teachings. Maybe they were even deliberately destroyed after the process and his execution. But we have lots of testimonials of the teacher Gerber. They tell us that they were having communion in the forest, secret meetings in barns. They were baptized at night, and they got marriages at the banks of the Aare River. So you can imagine in this landscape that how they were hiding everywhere. From the point 4, you can see point 1, which is the church of Sumiswald. You can also see point 2, the Sumiswald Castle, and the roof of the Haslibacher farm. So the trail is nicely connected, and it's a good walking distance. Stop 5, about the family church. There's a good story around them. Another Anabaptist, Benedict Brechtbühl, he converted to the Anabaptist, but he was taken away his goods and got in prison. Then they sent him to America on a ship on the Aare and on the Rhine River. But the Netherlands authorities did not accept these deportations, so they let him free. He got contact with the Anabaptists in Netherlands and told them about the repressions in the Bern area. So they wrote a letter to the Bern officials and complained, and so the officials allowed the family church to emigrate officially on ships through the Aare. They finally ended up near Mannheim, but then came to Philadelphia in the Germantown area, which was a village then. And later Mr. Schurch founded the village Schöneck. This is the place where he came from before he went to Sumiswald. So we will see that on a map later. Even that family church could emigrate officially, the Bern authorities were still hunting the Anabaptists. This is the stop number 6, the hunters. And the authorities released some papers, official papers, that nobody could host the Anabaptists, so they should be punished for hosting. They should be rewarded for telling where they are, so they could be hunted. This is one of these mandates. Once a group of hunters was seen bringing some Anabaptists to the valley down to Sumiswald, but the other farmers, they were finding them, and they were just beating the hunters so they would never hunt again. They were bloody. And of course, the authorities reacted on that. They made a trial, and 1 year later, in 1715, they sentenced them to high penalties and banned them for a year to other areas of Switzerland. But they were not killing them so directly anymore. The next stop, number 7, is about an Anabaptist hideaway. They had hideaways in the houses. After the craftsmen were going off the construction site, the owner would secretly make another wall so they could, or made a hideaway under the roof, like this one. This is the only one which can be visited by tourists. And so the Anabaptists could hide and not be found by the hunters. Another hideaway story is that you open a wardrobe, then push aside the clothing, push aside a board, and then you can go through in this secret room, have a candle there and be heated, because the stove heats also on the other side. It's a very interesting technique they developed to survive. From point 7 you can see point 9. Point 8, assembly places and cemeteries. So they had places in the woods where you have a very narrow path, and then it goes behind a hill, and there's like a little valley where they could sit and sing, even if it could not be heard just 20 yards away. And they put their cemeteries in the middle of the woods. They called this area of the wood America, and when the officials asked them, where has this or that person gone, they said they have emigrated to America. So instead of confessing that, they dig them under the earth in the woods. This is a very good diplomatic way to do that. Now we're going on to point 9, the Castle of Traxelwald. It is one of the most impressive and totally intact medieval castles of Switzerland. It was owned by Burkhard from Sumiswald, who had to give it to the Bern people in 1383, and finally he had to sell it to them in 1408. In 1528, and 120 years later, it was handled by the bailiff, and he was very active in the prosecution of the Anabaptists. We are going into this tower, which was one of the hardest prisons of the area, and people were held there under very bad conditions. You will see it very fastly. There is a book called Passion in Bern by Walter Leidrach, and it says the prisoners were beaten and they were told bad things, and they were lying there with their feet in heavy chains, without straw and without blankets, just on the naked floor, getting water and bread. The women cried and the beaten men were mourning. But in the beginning of the day, Mrs. Anna was singing this song. My harp is broken if I want to sing. My desperation has hit me that it may not sound. But whom can I complain to? Then I will tell my dear Lord, he never desponds and helps me from all constraint. So when she sang it, all the others were joining the singing, and it was a strong choir, so that the ward was crying at them and say, I'll beat you that you die and you cannot even reach Bern, where you are getting a trial. So but it shows that the force of this singing irritated the people with the power. So also the farmer Niklas Leuenberger was shortly in this prison, and in 1798 the people were just stealing away everything from the castle. And the farmer of the castle, they had an institution for poor people from 1835 through 1876, and then 1892 until 1928 there was education institution for youth, for young people. Then it was again a place for government of the region Traxelwald, but in 2009 these regions were connected and the castle of Traxelwald is not used anymore by the canton. Here you see the Haslibacher song, which is point 10. Walking through this prison, you get a lot of emotions when you see how people were suffering there. This is one of the most narrow staircases I know. These cells were called the boxes for murderers. Here you can see that they were fixed with the feet, and in plus they got chains in the hands, at the hands, and they could put their digestion through that hole, and the smell will have been very special. And you don't see any heating anywhere, so in the winter time the conditions were very tough. Even there's a little blanket, so sort of luxury. The view is gorgeous, but it is disturbed by these iron bars. When we go further up, we see a room where the prisoners probably could move a little bit, 1 hour per day or so. There's a good view from up there over the landscape. So this is a bigger space. Who knows how much time they could spend there. There in the background you see the tower of the Belp mountain, which is beside the airport of Bern. The village of Traxelwald below. A little park, a little garden rather than a park. Yeah, this room must have been the best place for the prisoners to relax. Now we come to the climax of the Täuferpfad. It is the exhibition Wege zur Freiheit, Ways to Freedom, in the castle, in the rooms of the former district prison, which is no more used as a prison, but it's the most adequate place to make an exhibition about the Anabaptists who were treated like that. Here the view opens to international aspects. They show the distribution of Anabaptists around 1525 to 1550, and later the world map of the MCC, Mennonite Central Committee, how many Baptists are there. So these cells are used as an exhibition room now. It is perfectly done by Hans-Peter Jecker and his team. An excellent exhibition about the Mennonites and the Anabaptists in Switzerland and elsewhere. Now we make a little flight from Germantown in Philadelphia to Lancaster County. We also find the Amish city with the Amish Museum, Amish Town, sorry. And in the northeast there's the village of Schöneck, which was founded by Schurch von der Tann, who was presented at Station 5, Stop 5. In the exhibition, the traditions of the kilt making is displayed. The Mennonites used the rest of their cloths and put them together as beautiful kilts. And using this technique, even women make projects of peace and show it to other women how they can build these kilts. Nice posters on the walls, also in the hallway. And you see how simple the Mennonite meetings were. You see the cover of the historic Bible from 1536, Froschauer Bibel, printed by the printer Christoph Froschauer in Zurich in 1536. And these words from the Bible is typical for the Mennonites to use them, and it's important to live them and not only say them. Mennonites sing a lot, their hymns, and as the Haslebacher Lied has joined into the singing book Ausbund, which has been transported to the United States and is still used by the Amish people. So they were reading the Bible, their furniture were very simple, the whole lifestyle very simple and modest. They were prosecuted and they had to leave their home country often. That's symbolized by these suitcases. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. You know the Märtyrer Spiegel, the Märtyrer Mirror, where all the people who were killed for their faith are listed, a big book. The correct name for this book is The Martyr's Mirror or The Bloody Theatre, which was first published in Holland in 1660 in Dutch by Tieleman van Bracht. And it displays all the defenseless Christians who baptized only upon confession of faith and who suffered and died for the testimony of Jesus, their Savior, from the time of Christ to the year 1660. So now we are coming to the next station, which is point 10, a sort of virtual stop at the Haslebacher Song. On the English website about this film with the domain spirit.ellenberger.institute, you can find links to the English version of the Haslebacher Song. It's very interesting to follow the text and enjoy the old German ways of formulating. At the end of this document, there is a documentation about the priests in Bern who complained at the government that one should not treat the people bad like that because of their faith. So this is one of the influences who then softened the development of the prosecution and convinced the government to calm down. The Haslibacher song has entered into the singing book, which is now also distributed in the United States, called the Ausbund. It is very interesting that this book is still in use in the United States. Many Mennonite congregations, at least at the Amish people, who are using it. And the Haslibacher song is very well known. It shows some attitude of the Mennonites to stay up for the belief in God despite of persecution, even despite of the risk of their own life. The title of the Ausbund says, this is several beautiful Christian songs, how they have been sung in the prison of Passau from the Swiss brethren and from other Christians. So if you enter www.spirit.ellenberger.institute, it switches to Taufe, the German version, but you can scroll down and switch to English. Under music, you find the Ausbund and the US website Hymnary. And then in the Haslibacher song, you find the full text, the link to the full text in English. There you find everything from the song, which is sung in German, and the background music. So in 28, he took his hat off and laid it before the people, and he prayed. And when his head was cut off, it sprang back into his head, and the signs they did now see. The sun was red as blood, and the town well sweated blood. So this is the impressive story, very well put in words. At this point, we complete the Anabaptist trail with position 1, which is the Church of Sumiswald. It was built in 1510 by the Deutsche Orden, the German order, who was the owner of the castle, the builder of the castle. And in these 20 years, until 1525 and 30, there were a lot of movements because Zwingli was preaching in Zurich, and the first Anabaptists began baptizing grown-ups. They were separating from Zwingli because he was not consequent enough for their opinion. So in Sumiswald in 1532, the priest was Heinrich Summerer. On one Sunday, he said the Anabaptists should better make dogs or calves than leaving their children unbaptized. And Hans Haslibacher was present, and he wouldn't accept this offense. And in the middle of the service, he stood up and contradicts the priest. And later, he was put in front of court for this, and his difficulties began. He was imprisoned and he was banned, but he came back home to his Anabaptist friends and family until he finally was brought to Bern and executed in 1571. So the officials felt threatened by this behavior of the Anabaptists and answered with persecution and suppression. So at least nowadays, the church people memorize the killed people from Sumiswald. I see 7 names here on this memory board, and repents a little bit, but they should change the behavior instead and come back to real life, to live the faith, which is beautifully symbolized by this tree in full blossom, like a symbol for the tree of life. Now we even prolong the Anabaptist trail with the virtual station 11, which is the place of the congregation in Langnau, Emmental. They have been present in this building since the 20th century, and they are a very vivid congregation now. They have built a modern center. They enlarged the old building. They have an assembly room, and after the service, everybody is talking to each other. It is so vivid that I was then allowed to interview some people, but the talks from outside were so loud that the audio could not be used. Anyways, I will present you parts of the interview with subtitles and beautiful music of the Brandenburger family band from the United States, the Amish people. I love this music and this band. So we have the last station, stop 12, baptism by the Holy Spirit. John the Baptist said, I baptize you with water, but he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit. So people were killed for the outside ritual of baptizing with water. But what is the inside meaning of living the Spirit, of doing every thought and action in the law of God? Psychiatrically speaking, I have to possess my own body with my own soul and be connected to God and live His law. Christ said, who lives me, rivers of living water will flow from within them, from His body. So if people live that, there will be peace and harmony among them. Nobody will be able to persecute anybody else. There will be peace on earth.